Welcome back to Internal Affairs, a police podcast. This is episode 4. And let me tell you something. They're all special guests for sure. And this one's a little dear to my heart because es un hermano mío, argentino. My best friend's actually from Argentina. Don't ask me how that happened, but actually he influenced me to come on the job. And that's a whole different story. However, our guest, Christian Lata, is a really good buddy of mine where we actually met. Believe it or not, we actually met at LA Fitness. I think we were playing basketball. Chris, welcome,
we were
man.
in a
Is that true
basketball
or correct,
court.
or how did that go down?
We were in a basketball court, but you were dribbling a soccer ball. And I thought that was kind of odd, but I love soccer, and that's what kind of brought us together.
And then we started talking, and that was it at the time that you were actually applying, or were you in the process, or how did that go down?
I was actually a firefighter at the time.
Okay.
And it's weird. I'm like one of the oddities that got hired as a firefighter and didn't really like the job of a firefighter. I didn't know that firefighters are actually 80% of what they do is medical calls, and I didn't like the medical field. And I was like, man, I
And
think
cleaning.
yeah. And you started talking to me about LAPD, and you kind of influenced me to apply for the job. And that was about
Uh,
18 years ago.
yes. So we'll get into that. So let's see. That was 7 years ago that you actually, and by the way, we're at Hollywood, Florida, right? You're in the state of Florida. And you did 7 years with the LAPD.
7 years with the LAPD, and I'm still on the job. 10 years here in Florida.
Right. Good, good. Okay. So here's the deal. So this is an internal affairs podcast, and you and I spoke that you are going to share a story about how this complaint investigation with the Los Angeles Police Department went down. But before that, I always ask my guests these two questions. So the first question is, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, where is internal affairs the most important job in the department? Where would you rate that or scale it?
I would scale that on a 10.
10 being the highest.
Because they have the career of the police officer in their hand. And it's basically their livelihood and their family's livelihood.
And insane. So let me ask you this. What expectation, as you sit here today, right? What expectation do you have from an internal affairs?
It's mixed. It's mixed. I believe that 99% of internal affairs investigators are great, honest people that are actually trying to get the truth and trying to help the officers as well as help the department find out what really happened. But unfortunately, there is a 1% or a small group of investigators that think that all officers are bad and they're going to find the rotten apple and they're going to go through the whole thing, and it doesn't matter what they do or how they do it and who they step on the way to achieve that goal. That's the bad part of internal affairs, I would say.
And you know what? And you just kind of answered my second question. What is the IH job? What is internal affairs' job? In other words, what's the role of an IA investigator, if you can kind of describe it in your own words?
I've never worked for internal affairs, but from what I understand, after being in law enforcement, internal affairs, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you have more knowledge in this than I do, but their role is to investigate criminal activity that police officers or employees of the city do or commit, and to give that information and pass it along to the chief of police or whoever's above them for them to pass on disciplinary action, or to pass along their findings to the state attorney or district attorney to see if they're going to go ahead and prosecute.
Man, see, look, I like it. You're ready for the role, bro. It looks like, you know what? You're next at your department
No,
that is one portion of it, right? So you're absolutely right. So you have a criminal aspect, right? Because the criminal offense is misconduct. We can agree to that. But there's also the administrative part where you have like pretty much this the way you conduct yourself, you neglected to do something or you failed to do something, and maybe perhaps also you violated policy. So those minor things are also part of internal affairs. And I find it interesting though, because when I ask the question, when I teach, I do teach this internal affairs course, you get mixed answers. You get people say like, well, I'm in this to protect cops, right? I mean, you want to be able to say to yourself, you know what, Chris, he's a good dude. I know what kind of police work he does. He's a professional. He's respectful. And these little minor type of allegations, just no way that he did something like that, right? So, but the problem is that if I take that position, right, that, hey, I want to go in here and make sure no stone goes unturned. I'm going to do the best investigative work that I can do. However, what if you get that one that's doing, sex crimes, child molester, or rape for that matter? So, well, you just got done saying you do this job to protect cops. So that's a really tough position to take in terms of protecting cops. Because when I started internal affairs, I never really thought of it that way, but I thought to myself, you know what? There's a lot of just bullshit type of allegations that, you know what, I can be able to exonerate and ensure that I do a good job and move forward and say, hey, you know what, Chris or any other officer, they didn't do something like that. The other one would be like, to your point, it's to get to the truth, right? You're a fact finder. And so you'd be surprised how I suppose there's mixed type of responsibilities that people would describe, but I think you and I can agree that all we ever want from an investigator is just pretty much, you know what, do your job to its maximum capacity. Would you agree?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I do think that different departments, I think the job of internal affairs is harder. I think that maybe in a department as big as LAPD, the aspect of conducting investigations on officers that you've never met in your life might be a little easier than conducting an internal affairs investigation on an officer. Say a department that I work right now, it only has 350 officers.
Yes.
It's like, you know, these guys, you've been to their house, you've been to family get-togethers with them, you've been to picnics with them. That is basically the reason why I commend you for what you did. It's hard. It takes a special person to be able to open up the closet and see the secrets that these people have, if they have any. And then when it comes to light and having to be quiet about it and not being able to say anything, I mean, there's something that I've always heard. There's three forms of communications. It was the telegraph, then it was the telephone, and now it's the telecop. So it's hard to not say anything, and you guys, like, your lips are sealed.
Yes, especially if it was your partner. Can you imagine you had a partner that you were with, and all of a sudden he or she makes sergeant, and next oh shit, you know what, Chris is, oh shit, he's getting an IA. That's gotta suck.
Man, they know a little bit too much about you, huh?
Exactly. Okay, so here we go, man. Tell us, well, of course, I should ask you, right? Have you had an internal affairs complaint with the Los Angeles Police Department? How about that? Let's go with that first.
I'm gonna go with yes. I have.
Okay. Now take me to the journey. I certainly, not just me, but the audience, right, would definitely like to know. You've had a few. And I think when you and I spoke, I said, why don't you tell us about one? Because at the end of the day, the reason why I'm doing this podcast is because I want lessons learned. I think everybody wants to be able to, at the very least, get some growth out of it, right? Because you have a lot of young officers who are going to listen to and watch this. And you probably have some officers that are applying that want to become law enforcement officers, right? And so I'm all about lessons learned and a chance to reflect on your incident. Just why don't you go ahead and tell us what happened, bro?
Well, the one that we're going to talk about is the big one. I've had a few. I've had, I think, about 18 or 19 in 7 years. And actually, that's not a real big number, being that all of them except one was exonerated or unfounded. So after the investigation was done, they noticed that all of them were fine, that I really didn't do anything wrong except for one. And one that was sustained is actually not the one that we're going to talk about. It was sustained for telling someone to go F off after a long discussion. And when they asked me about it, I said, yeah, I did. I said that. I'm sorry. I mean, I shouldn't have. I'm not going to sit
Yeah.
here and lie about it. And I
Yeah, of
didn't get in
course.
trouble. I didn't get in trouble for it because I told the truth. The
Good
one
for
that we're
you.
going to talk about is one that I was actually riding pine for about, I'd say, close to 8 months for. And by
Wow.
riding pine, I mean I was riding the front desk. I couldn't go out on the street. My partner wasn't with me. He was mad at me because I got in trouble. And it all came down to a sergeant that was never supposed to investigate this and was actually told not to investigate this. And he took it upon himself to investigate it. I'll tell you a little bit of background about what happened. I'd say this was, I had maybe 4 years on the job when this happened. I
Okay.
was working in the San Fernando Valley. And about a week before this happened, we had one of our helicopters get shot by a rifle.
Okay.
It was able to do an emergency landing at Van Nuys Airport and everyone was safe, but it raised a lot of red flags and a lot of warnings and everything about, hey, when the helicopter's up, hey, he needs to be careful. So there was a big party on a Friday night at a house. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and officers have been out at this house numerous times. Just how you know, Los Angeles is the gang capital of the world, and there were a lot of gang members there. Our gang unit showed up. The officers showed up. Everyone showed up. The airship, the helicopter, broadcasted on the radio that he believes that there's a person who's armed that pointed a firearm at his helicopter. So now we're all on alert, right? Then all of a sudden, the airship starts putting out and broadcasting that there's a male Hispanic. He puts out his description that's running southbound through, I forgot what street it was. And we were actually around the corner. We turn around, me and my partner, there's two men to a car. We turn the corner and we see him running. I get on the speaker on the PA and order him to stop. He keeps running. My partner gets closer to him. I jump out. I start a foot pursuit. My partner's broadcasting on the radio while I'm chasing him. He's paralleling us. And it wasn't a long foot pursuit. It was about, I'd say, 2 blocks. I never carried an asp. Sorry, I was getting a phone call. You can go back. I never carried an asp. I carried a side handle baton.
Right.
And the way you carry that is you hold onto the handle and it rides along your forearm. So while I'm running, I'm gaining on this guy. This was a long time ago. I was younger, in better shape.
Oh, of course.
You're
not doing that now. I know you're not doing that now.
I don't think I could do that now. He abruptly turns around. I put my hands up to protect myself, and my momentum took me into him. I didn't hit him. I didn't strike him. And the whole thing is being recorded on the helicopter because he's following us. So they're recording the whole thing. I didn't have a body cam. We didn't really have body cams at that time. But it was all recorded because of the helicopter. I crash into him. He hits the floor. I straddle him. I turn him over, put handcuffs in him. He's all right. He complains of no injury, but we do arrest the guy. And then in the report, I write, it was a foot pursuit. The reason why I was chasing him, the orders that I gave out, that I'm in full uniform and everything, and that while running, he stopped. I ran into him, and he fell down to the ground, and I put handcuffs on him. I didn't lie about anything. Nothing. Everything's perfect. I even said that I had my baton in my hand. Everything. I even said that I believe I might have crashed into him holding the baton, but that the suspect was not complaining of any injuries. The sergeant that we're speaking of he was on scene, decided to come and speak to the suspect. The lieutenant on scene told him to drop it, that nothing happened. And he not only didn't drop it, but when the suspect bailed out or got out of jail, he drove to the suspect's house and interviewed the suspect in the house and recorded the interview. I was not privy to that recording, but I was told by the IA investigator off the record that the recording had content that led them to believe that the suspect was coached in what to say.
Wow.
The suspect changed his story. The suspect said that I struck him with a baton numerous times. And it's all on video.
Wow.
That I didn't do any of this. Yet It was an 8-month long investigation, numerous interviews, numerous people interviewed by IA, waste of time. And honestly, it was like a morale like crusher, not just for me, but everyone on my squad, everyone that worked with me, everyone that knew me. They're like, dude, we know Officer Lata did not do this. Yet he's riding pine. He's facing could possibly be facing termination. All these things. And what does that accomplish? It doesn't accomplish anything, you know. And at the end result is you have officers that are not wanting to do any police work. They're doing the bare minimum to get paid and go home. And that's not what we need. That's not what we need.
Yeah, yeah. It's what's that term we use? That's a Blue Falcon move, if I'm correct. Yeah, that's
Falcon.
a Blue Falcon first degree move.
That was actually his nickname. But okay.
You know, I will tell you that's there's a lot of Blue Falcons that you and I have encountered in our careers. So that one just obviously sticks out. Look, I got just to touch on it in terms of the incident itself. When you said there was video, was this prior pre-body worn video or?
Yes, it was. We didn't have body worn cameras in. I actually left LAPD while they were doing the transition to cameras.
Okay. Yeah. Now, let me ask you this, though. Is this particular complaint, because I know you and I kind of touched on the fact that when you did lateral, right, when you transferred and just left LAPD, you went, you know, to the state of Florida, and was there anything pending, or was this part of that incident, or
no,
something kind of?
I had no pending incidents. This was done, and then when I came here, there was a lieutenant that didn't like me very well, and he opened up a frivolous IA complaint on me. And lucky for me, there was a sergeant that I worked with at my prior division that knew me very well, and I'm not going to say any names because I believe he still works for the department.
Of course.
But he was assigned to IA, and my background investigator at my new department told me, "Hey, man, we want to hire you, dude, but you have an open IA complaint, and you said you didn't."
Wow.
And that's when
unbeknownst to you.
What's that?
Unbeknownst to you, you didn't even know.
Unbeknownst to me, I actually, this was during the time when LAPD was going through financial hardships or something, and we were not getting paid overtime. We had a second bank which was established. I had close to 400 hours banked of overtime. I was pretty active, arresting a lot of people, going to court. And when you go to court, you're not getting paid, but they're giving you time off. So I had so much time off that I decided to use that time off to establish my family and establish myself with a new department here in Florida. So I was gone. I was gone for like 3 months.
Wow.
And during those 3 months is when they opened up this IA on me, knowing that I was trying to leave LAPD. Wow. So my background investigator, who actually became good friends with me, told me, "Hey, man, unless you know someone," because I called over there, they're not giving me any information. Is there anything you can do? I told him, "Dude, I don't know anyone in IA right now," because I didn't know that sergeant was there. Well, he happened to call one day, and that sergeant picked up. It's like the stars were aligned. It was like meant to be. And he told me, he's like, "Dude, I know this officer. He worked for me. He's actually a good officer. I didn't know he was leaving." And he's like, "Let me see." He pops it up. He reads it to himself. And then he basically tells the background investigator, "Man, I'm going to let you, I'm not supposed to say this, but this investigation, not only is it frivolous, but it was sent back to the division because it doesn't meet IA criteria." And there's actually a commendation that this officer got for the same incident. So he got commended for doing a good job, and then he got reprimanded because they said that it wasn't good enough. I don't know what the heck.
God. You know, go ahead.
Basically what it was is we went to a restaurant like at 8 o'clock in the morning. There was a guy who was high, naked, and he had his hand behind his back. He wouldn't comply with anyone. We didn't know if he was armed. We weren't approaching him. We were too far away to tase him, and we didn't have a beanbag at the time. So there was a sergeant there. There was 4 other officers. And, you know, I came up with an idea. I said, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to grab the shotgun." You know, I took all the shells out, so it wasn't loaded. I didn't point it at him, but I just, you know, I yelled out a profanity. I chambered what
That's
seemed
right,
to be a
racket.
shell, and I
Yeah.
told him, "Hey, get the F on the ground, or I'm gonna blast your effing ass off." And the guy got scared, and he laid down on the ground, and we took him into custody. Well, it was recorded on surveillance camera. I got commended for quick thinking and being able to resolve everything without violence. And this lieutenant, who did not like me and did not want me to leave, opened up an IA because I used profanity. So
Wow.
that's what the IA was. Luckily, everything was resolved, and that IA became I don't know what it's called when it comes down to the sergeant level or down to the division level.
Okay. Yeah. Divisional level.
Yeah, so it had to go there and get resolved there. But I was already hired with my department at the time. They wanted me to come in for an interview, and I said no. I'm not going to fly out. I'm not going to fly 2,000 miles across the country so that you can tell me I didn't do anything wrong. I'm good.
Wow. And
Yeah.
here's the bizarre part about this whole thing is that, look, obviously I'm an IA alum. I did the job and I've been involved in discipline for like over 12 years. And you know what? Sometimes we just do some stupid stuff, man. Stuff like this where, hey, well, let's adjudicate this complaint. So where is he at? Well, he's not even in the state of California. So, you know, it just, it's bizarre. Anymore. Exactly. It's not even, it doesn't even work for the department anymore. And here we are wasting I suppose, our taxpayers' money to get to the bottom of the truth and to, you know, gain that community public trust. And at the end of the day, this was already done. I got to share something with you. What happened to you, I actually appealed a sustained complaint. Kind of the same circumstances. There was an officer who was involved in the use of force. To make the long story short, it was like 3 officers in real small quarters, and they had to take this guy into custody, and they got into a use of force. Dude, the sergeant that was at scene wrote an accommodation for all of them, but he ended up getting an IA, and they sustained 2 allegations against this officer. But what internal affairs didn't know that he was actually commended for this whole incident. So when we did the hearing and the appeal, I was working the defense because I was a defense rep more than I was in internal affairs. And when I told the hearing officer, let me back up, the sergeant I brought in to testify. So, you know, he's telling the story. Hey, this is what happened. And they did a great job. They were in close quarters, considering all the circumstances. I gave them an accommodation. I'm like, really? You did? Would it happen to be this accommodation right here? And, you know, and part of the closing arguments to your point is, look, what message are we sending? This is the lessons learned. What message are we sending officers where we're saying, look, you did a great job, but you know what? We're also going to cut a face sheet and do an IA on you. It just, and that's the unfortunate part about a big machine like LAPD, where you have 9,000 plus sworn employees, and there's over like, I think excess north of 3,000 complaints, where it gets lost in this big assembly line, and no one really pays attention to what should be done, no any different than what happened to you. And I suppose for me, let me kind of talk to me a little bit about the emotional component. I mean, what is it that, is there any lessons learned that you can tell the audience about what happened to you, considering you had one that we talked about with a sergeant that I suppose he just didn't like you because he's not doing his job. So it's almost self-serving and personal, I would agree. And then what happened to you when you left the department and went somewhere else? What lessons learned or what accountability, if any, can we talk about or share with the audience?
Well, I'd like to say this one part. On both of those IAs, the actual IA investigators were the ones that were on board, like, hey, this officer didn't do anything wrong. It was the divisional level that had issues. It wasn't IA. IA was actually good. IA was actually the ones that solved it. They're the ones that were fair, the ones that noticed, hey, why is this guy getting in trouble? Why are you sending us this? Yes. You know, why are you utilizing internal affairs as your personal weapon to mess with other officers? because that's
Yes.
what they're doing. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
I can't mess with you here at the divisional level. I'm going to send it to IA. Well, IA is not going to do anything because they're honest and they're actually going to find the truth. But the bad part is that just like when a supposed victim files a complaint against someone and it really wasn't true and they lied, they don't come
Yes.
back and prosecute for lying.
Correct.
It's the same thing with the supervisors. When these supervisors are doing these things that are wrong, they don't come back and reprimand the supervisors for doing it. It's obvious that they're doing something wrong, but they don't get reprimanded. And
I couldn't agree with you more, Chris. I think that we should hold definitely sergeants, right, that are cutting face sheets. You know, you're the intake sergeant, you're doing the intake, you are an investigator, that is your role, and we should hold them accountable for sure. Look, part of misconduct is failure, right? It's neglect of duty. I would venture to say that in your situation, and a lot of them that I ran into in my experiences, you know what, you fail to conduct a thorough investigation. So, you know what, we should jam you up as well. But you're right, that's not a common practice. It doesn't happen. And believe it or not, you touched on something that I definitely want to address is the weaponization of internal affairs.
yeah,
Unfortunately, Chris, till this very day, as we sit here today in 2023, it's probably happening more uh, right now in my beloved LAPD in terms of weaponization. And I'll only mention LAPD because I'm an LAPD retiree alumni, IA alumni, but it's happening in a lot of agencies, not just in California, but it happens a lot. That's just something that we need to get better at, and that's very, very unfortunate. Well, look, I thank you for sharing that with me. So we're at a point now in the episode where I get to ask you best and worst, right? So I'm going to ask you
best and worst.
best and worst. But what I'm
Okay.
going to do is I'm going to go with the worst first because I don't want to leave like in a really bad note. So I ask you, worst incident or situation in your police career?
Well, I'm still on the job, so I got to be careful.
Right.
Worst for me,
Or something you can think that happened when you were in LAPD.
oh, at LAPD, worst incident, emotionally, kind of that, like I still think about every day. Not every day, but I still think about often.
Yes.
It was a child abuse call. I was on probation. I was a boot. I was wearing my tie, my long sleeves, and I was still there when they made you wear your shiny shoes. All
Me
right.
and you both.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you couldn't get your shiny shoes off until you got in a fur pursuit, and you couldn't wear your short sleeves until you got into use of force.
Yes.
Well, that day I got into use of force. um, it was a child abuse call. We went there, and I was like I said, I was a firefighter before, so I knew a little bit about medical stuff, and I could tell that these were bilateral burns on this baby, and the palms of their hand. Well, basically, it came out as a burn. It was there just to back up the fire department because I guess the father on scene was getting aggressive with the fire department. So we just
Okay.
went to keep the peace, you know?
Correct.
So we go there and I'm looking and I look at the baby and I see the palms of the baby's hands were completely fine. There was nothing wrong with the palms of his hands, but he had bilateral burns to like mid humerus, like up here, like between his shoulder and his elbow. So I told my training officer, who was a P3,
Right.
I told him, "Hey boss, this is child abuse." And he's like, "Yeah, I know this is abusive. No, this is child abuse." And he's like, "How do you know?" And I was like, "I used to be a medic. This kid has his hands are fine because he clenched his hands when he dipped them in the boiling water,
Oh,
and the lines were straight across on both. So he dipped them in and then pulled them out. So I got pissed. I grabbed the guy and my FTO grabbed me and said, "Bro, I know you want to kick his ass right now, but we can't. You can't." So instead, we arrested him. We called the detectives. Actually, a D3 ended up coming out for this one,
yeah.
and
And
they actually
DCFS?
DCFS came out. Yeah, the whole thing. This is like 17 years ago.
Yeah.
But usually they don't usually arrest on scene for child abuse because they want to build their
Right.
case. They actually
Of
arrested
course.
him there. They actually
Wow.
arrested him right there and then. So
Wow. Yeah. You know, I always say when I ask that question about the worst incident, a lot of my guests really reach back to something that happened a long time ago. And it's just to show you how much of an impact this career, this profession has on you when you can just without hesitation talk about something that happened 17 years ago. I mean, I'm with you. I had a something similar as well back in 2001 that I just remember every single detail of it. So
Yeah.
I thank you for that. So let's get to the good one. So what about the best, man? Best incident or moment? Doesn't have to be, a rated, whatever you can think of on the job.
This one happened here in Florida, actually. So it's a lot more recent. I've worked patrol, I've worked gangs, I've worked a little bit of narcotics, and now, like I'm actually a public information officer for the department. So
right.
I'm more chill, more relaxed. I get to deal more things with the community and stuff like that. Well, this call was not handled specifically by me. Actually, it wasn't handled by me at all. It was a domestic call. It was pretty bad. From the report that I read, the woman was stabbed a few times, and the child was beaten as well. It was a drunken stepfather. The guy was taken into custody. Everyone thought the woman was gonna die. He stabbed her with and cut her with a drywall knife. It's like a little saw. Yeah, and the kid saw the whole thing. Well, fast forward from there, she made a full recovery and everything. And the kid is actually an explorer with us now in our department and wants to be a police officer. I think they're like 13 years old now.
Oh, that's awesome.
The guy's in prison. The woman, from last I heard, actually works not for our department, but as I don't know if it's dispatch or some kind of civilian spot.
Civilian position.
And, and every Thanksgiving, our department, our school resource officers that work for our department pick kids from different schools that they go to their house, they give them a full Thanksgiving dinner, and then they take them shopping for Christmas. And this kid is one of those kids. And every year, it's been like 4 years now, every year he gets a gift card from Walmart that has $200. And what he does is he actually goes and buys gifts, like little gifts, but like 30 little gifts, and he donates that.
That's awesome.
So it's like a full circle of everything from community policing tactics to what the job really entails and what the satisfaction is at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, hey man, we share that same sentiment. I was a PIO, you're a PIO. Of course, I like to think my Spanish is as bomb as yours, because I know you got hired, to do all the Spanish stuff as well as English. But I know they told you, hey, can you do the sound bites in Spanish, right?
Yeah. And over here, we're in Miami, so Miami area is just as populated with Latin population as LA.
So imagine that. So I can tell you, my first soundbite, my PIO, I had a triple homicide at 105 degrees. I was in my complete class A's, and the father killed 3 of his kids inside a car, bro. There was the tent, homicide, the whole 9. And as I look, it's like right out of a movie. Everything was slow motion. As I look like about 50 yards to the main street, I see all the media just lining up. And as I'm walking over there, I'm going, oh shit, okay. And my training officer, right, my partner who was teaching me, she's like, okay, Marlon, you better be ready, dude. You better be ready. So what I did is I went to the side and I called my mom and told my mom, how do you say these words in Spanish, dude?
It's great.
Bro, I thought I can spit, but it's it's like a whole different, your mind doesn't switch right away. And get this, bro. What I made the mistake was I went through and did a soundbite. On a scale of 1 to 10, that was like a 5.5, and I'm being nice to myself. And then here's what happens. The chief, the incident was so newsworthy that the chief actually came to scene, and guess what he does? He does a soundbite. And guess where I'm at? I'm like on the side. I'm a rookie. This is my first time. I wasn't even near close to him to listen to what he was actually saying. And then I see everybody in the front row, and they're just licking their chops, thinking to themselves, oh, once he's done, guess who we're coming to next? And
Yep.
so the whole time I'm thinking, shit, dude, I'm trying to like scoot. I mean, this is live, so I'm trying to scoot,
I gotta hear
as
this.
close as I can and put an ear like, yeah. You know what? If you haven't done it, it's a challenging job.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sure you can agree to everything that I said. I'm sure you got some follies and some good stuff that you went through.
Well, as you know, I was a PIO for LAPD for a very short
Yeah.
time.
Yes.
And I remember one day they made me go down at Parker Center to give a soundbite in Spanish, and it was my first soundbite. And I came from working the streets to like, hey, get the F on the ground, to now having to be in Class A's giving a soundbite. And one of the guys that I worked with at my last division was actually working the desk at Parker Center, and he's making fun of me while I'm giving my soundbite. And the soundbite was about this guy that they caught, right? He was a guy that was going around town masturbating in his car and trying to abduct women, right? So in Spanish, I won't say it in Spanish, I'll say it in English, but in Spanish and in the soundbite, I have the video, I'll send it to you. It's hilarious.
Please do.
I go like this. Yeah, the guy was masturbating. I'm doing this hand gesture and everything. This guy's masturbating in his car and then trying to grab women. Luckily, the woman got away. That's what they used. Oh, it was great. It was great. And my buddies behind the desk were like this. Like, I can't believe he said that. And then it registered, and I'm like, oh my God, I actually just did this on camera.
Yeah. Hey, man, people don't know. It's a tough gig, bro. Hey, listen, you and I can talk forever. You're a dear friend of mine. I'm so glad that we connected. I'm happy that you're doing well over there. In the Sunshine State. I think that's what they call it, right? The Sunshine State, but Florida, the Gators, Orange. That's right. It's the Orange State. With that being said, Chris, any parting words or anything that you can share or any advice you have for all these people that are listening and watching as these, and you can share this sentiment where our profession is just not what it used to be in terms of like recruiting. You went through a lateral, right? I mean, you went from one agency to another. I know that's a topic that you and I discussed before we came on. Any parting words, any advice you can give to these officers or anybody who's listening and watching?
Well, if I've been through a lot of internal affairs investigations, and like I said, at about 18 IA complaints, they all worked out. They all worked out for the best. It all panned out. Unfortunately, some took longer than others, but they all worked out. And like I said, out of 18, I only had one sustained. And the reason I was sustained is because I said, hey, yeah, I did it. I said F you to this guy.
Yeah.
So just most of the time, the system works. It just takes too long.
Yes.
I do say this one thing. I do find it a little ironic that my shooting was resolved in 3 days.
Yes.
And unfortunately, a suspect got killed. But it was resolved in 3 days, and that's taking someone's life. My IA, where nothing happened, took 8 months.
Yes.
So something's not just right.
The system's, yeah. It's
broken.
broken. It's broken. It's broken for sure. How about any for the young officers out there, this profession?
A lot of things have changed.
Yes.
And I see it now. Now I actually see the whole big picture, because now I get to see behind the scenes. Now I get to see risk management. Now I get to see the court of public opinion. Yes. Now I get to see a lot of different things that before we didn't really have. When you were on the street and I was on the street, there were people that didn't like us, but most of the people liked us. Yeah. And now, I don't know if I could still say that most of the people like us. Yes. I know there's a lot of people that support us, but can I say that it's the same as it was before? No.
Yeah.
It's harder.
Totally,
now,
my friend. Yeah, no, I totally get that. Hey, muchísimas gracias por todo. Mi querido argentino, mi hermano, mi socio, mi compadre.
Argentina won the World Cup, in case you didn't know.
Vamos Boca. Right?
Don't remind me, man.
Yeah. But
We played good, but the other team
Advíncula.
was way better.
Pero
The other team,
Advíncula metió el gol.
they didn't just score one more goal than we scored. They played better the whole game.
Yes, they
Those
did.
Brazilians can play, man.
It's always you guys. Argentina, Brasil, de Sudamérica, siempre va a ser en un nivel increíble. I wish that, my peeps, you know what, we can save that conversation for later on. And, Cristian, muchísimas gracias. Thank you for everything. And we'll see you soon, brother.
All right, man. I'll see you here. We'll go fishing.
Yes, absolutely, bro. Take care.
See you later, man.
Okay, for all you listeners out there, please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and certainly don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Internal Affairs Police Podcast. And on that note, please be safe out there, and don't forget to go code 6. SAS.